So I have this question for you in light of all of this that you have structured now with regard to this class. And so my question is this. So obviously, from a Jewish understanding, we call it the Tanakh, right? The Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim, the law, the prophets, and the writings. So what is the relationship then when we talk about wisdom literature, but the classification being just a little bit different when we come from a
Mhm.
Jewish perspective with the writings? Can we say there really is a thing out there called wisdom literature in the Bible? What do you think
Yeah.
about this? And do you address this in the course?
Yeah, I do talk about this a little bit because, categories, I think, have pros and cons, and we have to be careful how we approach
Mm,
categories. So, first understanding that we are viewing something from our modern cultural perspective. Based on
mm,
how we view something, we see commonalities, we see patterns, similarities and differences, and then we put them into little different boxes. But that may not necessarily correlate to how an ancient audience of a different culture viewed something.
that's good. Yeah.
And so it is important for us to take mention of the idea that wisdom literature is a modern category. That's not something you just find, oh, here's our wisdom literature collection.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like there's a reason that people today do this. There are some books of the Hebrew Bible that have a disproportionately high percentage of wisdom vocabulary. That's true.
Mm,
Um, and there are books that seem to lack other dominant themes or motifs or narrative plot points in scripture. There's a reasoning for it. But as you mentioned, some of our oldest tradition is the Tanakh, the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim. And uh, and the way these books are structured, it doesn't actually fit into that exact pattern. So that's why this video course is actually not a wisdom literature course.
yeah.
It is
Good.
a
Good.
scripture course,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna go wherever the wisdom vocabulary is. Now, one of the things I do point out in the course, by the way, is you can't limit a theme to one word. And you also can't limit a theme even to a set of vocabulary necessarily, right? Uh, and you have to have some common sense. You have to have some rigorous hermeneutics to follow not only the words, but what are the words pointing to, and the things they point to, where do they lead?
Mm,
So there's a book, for example, in the video course that I think many will be really surprised. Wait, why are we spending time talking about this book? Like, I'm really shocked, but you'll realize, oh, of course we need to.
yeah.
So ultimately, what I would say is there is, a set of biblical Hebrew wisdom vocabulary. I try to choose a good set. There's a point where you're like, where does it end, right? What words do we just not include anymore? I try to choose a good set, and we actually go through the whole of Scripture, and we begin with Genesis.
Wow.
So some people might assume, oh, this is going to be a course on Proverbs, Job, and Ecclesiastes. It's not. Like, uh, yes, those books are covered, but there are uh, a number of videos in this course, and one of them is on Proverbs, one of them is on Job and Ecclesiastes, but there are a lot of other books that are covered,
Mm,
and it won't feel like a stretch because, again,
mm.
the wisdom vocabulary, it's there, and it's really interesting how it's used consistently too. And then what people will also see is that much of the message of our typical wisdom literature, I think, lines up surprisingly well with the rest of Scripture. It's just using a different rhetorical strategy,
Mm.
but in many ways lands us in a similar destination.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So it shows that wisdom really is the principal thing, yes, across all of Scripture in many ways.